As I was reading chapter 2 of Radical Together, I kept thinking to myself, who am I more like? Am I more like Andy or am I more like Ashley? I mean, you remember the two characters in the book. Andy, he was this guy who, he had everything together. He would come to church. He was a responsible guy. He'd probably even tithe and things like that. But when it came down to it, Andy was just unaffected by the gospel. He was unaffected in the sense that it didn't play out in his actions, and he maintained this belief that salvation was just a free gift, and there's nothing that he had to do, and he's right in that. I mean, God is the one who brings that about through Jesus. But Andy would, even with needs in his neighborhood and in his community, he would go through life just kind of unaffected by that. And I thought about that. Also thought about Ashley. Remember the story of Ashley? She was a girl who would look down into herself, and she would, just recognize the depth of her sin in her life. And really, she just felt like she didn't measure up. She wasn't good enough. And so she would go to classes at church. She would try to learn as much as she could. Again, nothing wrong with that. But the reason that she would do that is that she wanted to earn favor with God. She wanted to please God, and not just to please God, but to earn a place with God. And both of those folks, they didn't totally grasp the gospel. And I thought about myself as I read through this of, how about me? Am I more like Andy? Am I more like Ashley? So when we look at the Bible and we think about Ashley and we think about Andy, we really see that both of them, they had it wrong. The fact is that when we look at the Bible, we always see a connection between working and our salvation, that our salvation brings about this beautiful work that God wants to do through us. And Andy in the book, he misses that. He misses the fact that God wants to use his life. And Ashley, she missed the boat on the fact that she felt like that she had to earn approval from God, that she had to do more just to get through life and to have God love her more. And she lived life with guilt. And I think for me, so many times, I go back and forth between those two people. I mean, there are times where I think, there's so many needs in the world. There's so many people to help, and honestly, just like Ashley, I get overwhelmed with that. I mean, it's just unfathomable to think about, the people that haven't heard about Jesus and kids out there that need help, and I mean, it can be overwhelming. Some days I'm like that. There are other days when I'm like, man, I just really don't care. And there are days when I say, pass me another burrito, and while you're at it, pass me the remote control. I just don't care. I just kind of check out. I wonder about you. Who are you more like? Are you more like Ashley? Are you more like Andy in the story? The Bible is just really clear on this, that we are saved from our works so that we can work. And we're saved from earning our approval with God so that we can do things for God and do things for others. In Ephesians chapter 2, God lays it out very clearly. He says that we are God's workmanship, created to do the works of God. In fact, this idea of workmanship, it carries this idea of poem, that we are a beautiful work of God that God is making so that we can be a blessing to others. And I'm so confident of that when I think about the Cedar Ridge Church family, Cedar Ridge Christian Church family. I see families who are sacrificing in different ways. And I know that God is so pleased by this. And I know that there are others out there that God wants to use in great ways. And for you, as you think about that question of, who do I most relate to? Is it more of a Andy or more Ashley? There's another question I want us to think about too when we dig deep into this chapter of, what is it that God's wanting me to do? He lays out several examples in the chapter of specific things that we might be able to do, that God's calling us to do. But I wonder if we have spent time just listening and asking God, what is it that he wants us to do? That question of just laying everything on the table and saying, God, what is it that you want to do with our lives? I have to admit that a lot of my life I have spent not listening to that voice. And I think about maybe the things that God has wanted to do with my life that maybe I haven't heard him or listened, or just to be willing to hear what he has and what he wants to do in my life. What about for you? For those in your group tonight, today, whenever you're meeting, of just thinking that, what does God want to do with our life? For my wife and I, last year, we began to go through classes to become foster parents. And just to be quite honest, the reason we did is because we wanted to add to our family, and we wanted to work through that process and eventually to be able to adopt. And back last fall, we got a call from Oklahoma Department of Human Services, and they had a couple of kids for us to come to stay in our home. And man, we were so excited to have them come, and just eager to have them. And those first couple of weeks, we were really, it was really cool. But it wasn't long before it wasn't so great. I mean, to be honest, some of these weeks and days over the last several months have been probably some of the most difficult in our lives. Just dealing with baggage in their lives that we didn't know how to deal with, and sometimes we still don't know how to deal with, and dealing with baggage from our own lives, and just a lot of brokenness there of trying to figure that out. And I love in this chapter how David Platt, he brings it back to the cross, and he says if we're able to do things for God, they have to be flowing out of that relationship that we have with Jesus. The fact that we can love people who are unlovable because Jesus loved us because we were unlovable. For us, that's an evolving thing. That's one specific example that God has led us into, and I wish I could say it's something that we heard very clearly and God told us to do and we responded. I'm not sure if for us it's always come about that way, but I do know this: there needs to be a willingness. And so even today, for me and for my family, to say, God, what is it that you want us to do? Now, I wonder for you in your group tonight, today, whenever you're meeting, just being willing to say, God, what do you want from us? Maybe it is that you're supposed to become foster parents. Maybe it's that you're supposed to sell all your stuff and move to another continent to serve people. Maybe it's that you're supposed to be a mentor in a public school. Maybe it's that you're supposed to just start doing the right things that you're supposed to be doing and you're supposed to be doing. Maybe it's you're supposed to step up and lead a group to invest in other people's lives. I don't know what it is, but I think it starts here. I think it starts with the aspect where we come humbly before God and we just say, God, what do you want to do with us? What do you want to do with us? And the fact that we realize that we are all sinners, saved by grace, but that you've saved us not only from work, but to work. Here's what I want to challenge you to do right now in your meeting. I just want you to take a few seconds, and I know maybe for some of you this is one of the first times you've been in your group. I just want you to take a few seconds as you begin this time together just to pray together. God, would you reveal to us? Reveal to us in this study time, but then outside of the study time too. Would you begin to work and specifically to lead us to the things that you want us to do? And would you help us to live out our faith in a radical way? That when people say, look at those people, that they would say they're radical people who are living together. That we would be the church that's unleashed to be a blessing to the world. Would you pray that together as you begin your time together?